Hello everyone, welcome to the video. I recently had the chance to speak at a small networking event. It was held over lunch, and I wanted to bring something out of the design community that would be pretty much applicable to anyone and that would be easy to remember and follow along with over lunch. Now, I didn't have any proper recording equipment, so this video is not going to be the typical quality. And also for you subscribers out there, don't worry, I have more Webflow tutorials coming. That being said, I think this has some valuable info in it, so I wanted to share it with you. Here it is.
We'll be going over how to level up your brand's positioning. And for a little brief overview to start, since we've got a small group, if anyone wants to jump in, ask any questions, feel free to interrupt me. It's totally fine. If it's going to completely derail me, I might ignore you and just push past. But feel free to say something. And then we have three main exercises. They're quite simple. I wanted them to be easy to digest that we'll be going over. So the first one is user avatars. We'll be looking at competitive research. I find a lot of people don't look as deep as they could when doing competitive research, and they try to find exclusively companies that they're going to model. And I'll say companies just because that's what I'm used to, but I think these principles can apply a lot more than just that. And then a prioritization. And also with the overview, I'll just discuss a couple definitions of brand and what I'm referring to there, which is that is how people are going to perceive whoever your company or organization is. So in a sense, since that's internalized in every individual person interacting, there's kind of like all of your users have their own brand, which is the perception of who you are. And then positioning is going to be how you exist within the world. And it can be really that broad. And so this could be stuff like what products or services you offer, as well as marketing or branding material. That's going to solidify your positioning. So a quick who can benefit from this presentation. I was hoping there would be a few more people so I could pull a joke and say that this presentation is going to be targeted similar to what I'm going to teach. And so some people might feel left out. You need to fit two pieces of criteria. You need to be offering something. That could be a product, a service, and it could be to anyone, a customer or a client, as well as if you're maybe a nonprofit, then having like whoever's funding the nonprofit, stakeholders or government entities, you need to be offering something to them. And you probably need to have a social presence, whether that's online social media or whether that's a physical presence at things like trade shows. If you fit those two pieces of criteria, you need to be thinking about how you are positioning yourself and representing yourself. So we have a couple of goals with positioning. The most quote-worthy one is most of the time we want to find an audience, not build one. You can think of a couple of companies who have gone and created an entirely new market, something like Tesla. They went and created a market for electric cars that didn't previously exist. Or Netflix going and creating a market for streaming, which didn't previously exist. Now this is very challenging and it's going to take a lot of money. So if you're a small business, this is not a good choice. You want to find a market that already exists and target to them. And then a couple additional things. We want to speak directly to somebody. And this is actually a concern that a number of people will bring up when discussing positioning or targeting. What if I make people feel left out or isolated? And it's more of a fallacy than a real thing. So you could think of a company like Jeep talking about outdoors off-road vehicles. That doesn't mean that you don't see people exclusively driving them on the road. They don't feel left out because it's an off-road vehicle and they don't go off-roading. However, if you try to go so broad that you appeal to everyone, and you're like, oh, we kind of offer cars and whatever you want for whoever, that's when you actually start isolating people. It's just too wishy-washy. It doesn't actually land with anyone. Another thing, we want to inform targeting. So if you're using social media platforms, something like TikTok is going to work great if you have a teenage audience. However, if you're targeting to professional parents, there's probably 0 of them on TikTok. So that's not going to work.
TikTok.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, yeah, TikTok. What is that?
I don't know, I tell Mason he's not allowed on it.
New social media exclusively going to work for teenagers. That's who's using it.
How do I get on there?
On their website.
Would it be creepy
Or
if
app.
Chris is on it?
Does it?
Maybe some young adults as well.
You don't follow.
I'll think right.
There's no age limit, it's just that's who's using it.
Okay.
So if you're clear about who you're actually trying to reach, then you will prioritize different methods of targeting because of it. This will also inform your product and service or whatever it is you are offering. So because you know who you're trying to reach, then you can understand what's going to actually benefit them and tailor your services or product or offer to that. And the last one, hide from the giants. Who would be the giants? Well, in physical products, that's going to be companies like Amazon or Walmart that are extremely broad, sell anyone to everyone, and compete at an extremely large economy of scale. And these are companies you cannot compete against. They have too much infrastructure. And so you need to find a way to differentiate yourself from them. In my space, this would be a company like Squarespace that offers just cheap websites that you can kind of DIY yourself, and they work at a very large economy of scale. So for me, doing web design, I need to be very different from that. And actually, to stay on that point for one more second, a couple of things that you can do to stand out from those large corporations is mainly to be very personal and very exclusive. Those are things that are going to very quickly differentiate yourself from large organizations because they are neither of those things. So I have an example company, it's Nomad, and this is a electronics accessories company which primarily makes Apple accessories for Apple products. They do have a couple of other ones. And so this phone case, that AirPods case, and the cable is made by them. So this is one of their products. It's the Passport wallet, and how they describe their product. One for the minimalist, and one for the person who travels with everything. 2 styles crafted in our signature leather and packed with features to get you through the airport and beyond. And then we can go down here. We value functionality, keeping you powered and protected from nightstand to mountaintop. So they're speaking to somebody who does traveling, somebody who's into outdoors products. Now, their products can actually extend outside of that. They're just really classy, well-made phone accessories. But they chose a target market and somebody to talk to. And so what we can do is reverse engineer this a little bit with some of my bias of just what I've been exposed to. So our first exercise, user avatars. Now, you've probably all read a fiction novel of some kind or book, which has characters that don't exist, but after you read the book for a little while, you start to have some empathy for them, and you understand them as a person, even though they're completely fictional. And we want to do something similar. Who's actually interacting with your organization? Let's create a character for them. So we have a small checklist, and this is your bare minimum. This is what we want to start with, but we can expand a little bit beyond this. We want to have a name for them to make them a real person. We want to give them a title, kind of a basic description of who they are. We want some demographics of some type to understand who they are as a person. This would be things like age and where they live. We want to give them a short story. That's what's really going to make the connection in our minds to this person. we want to have some pain points or needs, and if you're not addressing a pain point or need, then maybe focus on a goal or an interest for them. And we want to give them a photo so that we can actually see them. So I made 2 user avatars for Nomad. Here's our first user. His name's Josh, and he does construction rentals. Some of his basic demographics are he's 29, he's married but doesn't have children, lives in northern BC, and makes $85,000 a year. He needs durability, style, and there's an element of status that he's looking for in a product. So if we read his story, Josh has worked for the last 4 years at a construction rentals company. He is responsible for dispatching primarily, but does do some sales, as well as sending and receiving of products. So that's where durability comes in. He might have his phone in his pocket and it get hit by things. He needs to keep it safe. And the reason why is because he's dispatching. So if he doesn't have his phone, he can't work properly. He needs to keep that protected. It's a complete necessity for him. And then outside of work, he's active outdoors. So you'll find him snowboarding on the weekends or camping in summer, snowboarding in the winter. And he tries to keep a good work-life balance. And he also wants to kind of match his style. So he's got his outdoor inspired everyday carry items. He wants his phone case to match that. That could be a user avatar for Nomad. A second one would be something like Alana, the marketing associate. She's 31, dating, lives in Utah, makes $75K a year. Now we are marketing to a more high-end audience here. These products are more expensive, differentiates them from giants like Amazon. She needs durability as well, style as well. She also cares about having a product that's a small size and environmental consciousness of the company. That matters to her. This is something that you'll find among a lot of outdoors people. So she's worked for the last 6 years at this marketing company that specializes in real estate, is responsible for creating listings, which includes photos, videos, and floor plans. Phone is also a necessity because she's working remote primarily. And so she needs to keep that safe. And outside of work, she does climbing, hiking.
What does she look like?
Photo up there. Kind of got a camera.
Okay.
She's doing. Cares about the impact that humans have on the planet, and so wants to purchase from companies who are proactive in how they address manufacturing and such. And needs to maintain a very professional appearance. She's working directly with clients, and so she doesn't want some bright pink OtterBox or something that looks weird to protect her phone. She wants it to look classy. So once we have these, we kind of know who we're talking to. And we can also get a little bit of empathy. This goes maybe even beyond what you would see as a Facebook profile. We kind of understand this person, even though they're fictional. This gives us a really solid base to work from. Is there any feedback on this exercise, or comments, questions, feelings? Does this seem like something that you guys could implement and maybe benefit from? Do you feel like you understand who you're trying to talk to?
Yeah, I never thought of using something like this to identify my audience. It's pretty cool.
And maybe one thing, I would try to keep this under 5 users.
Under how?
5.
Okay.
So these ones are quite similar, these two. You might have 2 users that are quite different, but that's who your audience is, so you have to straddle that line between what both of those users care about. And you might have a quite diverse audience, and then you might need something like 5 quite different user avatars. You need to find similarities between all of the different parts of your audience. Now, some people will feel a little bit left out, but it still benefits to have some targeting in this. So now that we have some people to talk to, we want to have empathy. Just kind of bounce this around in your head What is it like to be this person? What do they care about? How do they want to be talked to? What are some of their primary concerns or pain points? Really, on something like a website, which is what I'm thinking about, first, what we would consider above the fold, what is on your screen initially, we want to be addressing that person or those people quite directly right away so that they know they're in the right place. And then we want to mirror that back in our services and products, what it is that matters to them. So our second exercise is competitive research. So when we're doing competitive research, we have two things to consider: horizontal research and vertical research. So vertical research are companies who share our market but do not necessarily share user avatars with us. The horizontal research are companies that do share user avatars but don't share our market. So if we look at the horizontal companies, again looking at Nomad, who would these user avatars be also going to? Well, if they're buying clothing, it's probably from companies like Arc'teryx or the North Face. We can look at what their style is, how did they talk to their customers. It might be car companies like Jeep or Ford. How did they treat their audience? And it might be some like smaller goods products, stuff by like MSR or Clean Canteen. Look at their overall style. How are they addressing their market? Because they share the same customers as you now will, if you were responsible for Nomad. And then you also have to look at companies offering the same products as you. So Nomad is competing against Apple and Anchor and Belkin, but none of those companies are focusing at all on outdoors people. So that gives you your edge. OtterBox might be a more direct competitor, but they're also looking more towards the like blue collar worker. And so what you want to look at is what features of their products they're highlighting, but you want to give it the twist of your horizontal research. What are companies with your shared user avatars looking for? That's how I would address competitive research. And this allows you to go a lot further than a lot of people do when they just look for companies that are like them. You can actually look very far outside of companies that are like you to get a lot of information on how to address your customers. Any feedback on that or questions? All right. So after we go through these things, you should have some ideas bouncing around in your head of, oh, we could do this marketing campaign to help create awareness now that we know who we're targeting, or we could make these adjustments to our products or services. How can we prioritize things that we come up with? So this is the AJ and Smart prioritization chart. So on this we have two axes again. So the vertical one is, how difficult is this? How much time are we going to spend on it? What resources would we spend? And also with difficult things, how clear is it as to what we're even going to do? That's going to create your difficulty. And then on the horizontal axis, we look at how effective or impactful this action would be. And so when we do an exercise like this, we want to have just a single question. How might we improve our brand awareness? How might we improve this product? And then you don't want to filter out any ideas that you come up with. Write them down. Now they might go in the don't bother section, but just put them out there. And you can build off of ideas, but don't negate ideas when you're trying to come up with them. So if something is easy as well as extremely effective, you need to do that thing right away. That's your top priority. You'll get results very quickly. If it's very effective, but it's also going to be challenging, it's going to take a lot of time, plan for that. As soon as you get through the easier stuff, start working then on the more challenging stuff that will also be impactful. When you have something that's quite simple, but isn't going to yield a lot of results, that's stuff that you fill spare time with. That's kind of busy work, so to speak. And if it's going to be very difficult, as well as not yield very many results, largely don't bother. Or wait until everything else is off your plate, if that day ever comes. So to wrap the presentation up, I want to tell you a quote by Steve Jobs and how he's implemented something quite similar to this. You have to start with the customer experience and work backwards to the technology, not the other way around. And I hope I've given you some tools and tricks to play with in order to achieve something like this, where you understand your market and create a company organization specifically for that market. And so, to wrap up, I'll open this up to sort of a Q&A or consulting time for free if you guys want to ask me anything.